Hello there, Byakamyuso desu and welcome to my review of Assassin's Creed Mirage. So I will start by saying that this was basically my first Assassin's Creed that I ever played, so don't expect me to compare to previous entries of the series. And I'm not also the most informed in terms of history, so I cannot say if they followed the history of the specific country slash region that they were exploring in this game at the time. So I will not make any of those comparisons. I will just talk about my experience with this game. I have played other Assassin's Creed before. It was only one game on the PlayStation Portable, and if it was Bloodlines, if I'm not mistaken. But honestly, I remember I did have fun with the game, with the mechanics of it, but honestly, I don't remember anything related to the story specific of that game. So, trying to talk a little bit about the setting of this game, we are basically exploring Baghdad, and I cannot remember the dates. It was like 800. I'm not sure what was the year, but I know that it's, a lot of centuries before our present time. I will not talk about the historic situation. You can see that it was a time of political instability, a time where there was this big gap and huge difference between poor and rich people. So you have the people that are in the highest status that are very rich, and you can see the people that are on the lower status, which are very, very poor. And our protagonist Basim is one of those people. So he's basically living, in poverty. He is an orphan. He was taken in by, I cannot remember the name of this dude that has like a shop where he sells antiques and basically items that you are able to steal and collect. And he is in this small community, and he is, like a thief. The beginning of the game, I actually thought that I was playing this kind of Aladdin character, because he's like this small thief with a good heart. He's trying to help the kids that are also orphans and are gathered there. He's trying to survive. He feels that the current situation in his country is unfair and unjust, because you can see that the difference is just so big between people that have money and people that don't have it. People are living in very extreme opposites. And of course, he is, as everyone who lives in this situation, he is very displeased with the government, which I think it's called the Caliphate. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing any of these right, because honestly, every single name that is clearly taken from the actual words from the language, even the voice actors pronounced it differently during the game. Depending if you were, other characters, I would hear Khalifa or Khalifa. I don't know. It's so weird because there's not a consensus, so I do apologize if I'm saying words wrong or if I'm applying the terms in the wrong context, but it's not a culture that I'm very familiar with. And the game also was like, nobody is too sure how to speak the language, which I think is a shame. I do appreciate that sometimes there were moments where they would like put small words or small sentences in the language. Once again, not sure if there was like an advisor, a language expert that was telling the voice actors how to pronounce things, but you could see, I'm not sure if it was a question of accent or if that is a thing, there are different accents for different regions, but you could see that for some words I would recognize them, and people would pronounce them in different ways. Not sure why, if it was bad pronunciation or if it was a matter of accents according to regions. Not too sure. And honestly, the story is so bland because after that, basically, you have Basim and then you have Nihal. Nihal is portrayed as this, fellow orphan friend since his childhood that has been around Basim. And there was one time that he decided to break into the palace where the caliphate was, or the Khalifa was, and he wanted to steal something because I'm not sure if he was hired to steal that. I'm not sure if it was like a private contractor or if it was even, I think it was after Rosham, which is our main contact with the assassin's order. She was the one that mentioned something that she wanted stolen, and Basim kind of did it against other people's advising. So basically he breaks in, tries to steal this thing that is being very well guarded, and the Khalifa is also in the room, or it's the Khalifa's son. I'm not too sure if it was the actual governor of the place or if it was just his son, not too sure. And Nihal is there as well and basically kills him and throws everything into disarray. It was an artifact that, I don't know, it had some very specific technology that they don't really dwell a lot on, and he is able to activate it and see these visions. And yeah, basically he's taken out of there. The Khalifa, or the son's Khalifa, has been murdered by Nihal, and he's basically taken out. The city is then in a mess, in total chaos. People are being attacked. They are trying to discover who the hell killed this very important person, and Nihal ends up disappearing and Basim is taken into the assassin's order. And so you have all this context, and then you have the actual training and the jobs that he does while within the assassin's order, and you're able to see the ritual, how they join, how they are officially made assassins, which was nice. I liked seeing that context. Then you basically proceed to assassinate multiple people because the Assassin's Creed wants to restore order. And by doing that, they are basically assassinating these people connected to the government. Of course, they are corrupt people, like a librarian that is destroying documents that prove the corruption within the government and all that. They are, kind of vigilantes, overseers. You do all this to kind of reach the big bad, And of course it doesn't end there. I mean, I wasn't really invested in the plot. It's a very generic plot where you are crawling through dungeons because these people are in very big buildings protected by guards in every corner, and you are basically stealthing your way to try to get rid of the guards and finally reach your target. Basically, Basim comes to the realization that this is not enough for him because he hasn't been given the answers that he's looking for, because he's basically being haunted by nightmares of a jinn, which is like I guess an evil spirit, some representation of his consciousness, not too sure. And he is still looking for answers, and people have been giving him hints that he's something more. The order is using him when he in fact is holding a very specific power, and they won't tell him the truth, giving him this plot. And he ends up facing against the order. This is the last part of the game where I was very much confused, and this is where we're gonna enter very spoilery territory. So if you are someone that is interested in playing Assassin's Creed Mirage or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, yes, if you are also interested, maybe this is spoiler territory for you as well. Or maybe you want to know what I'm going to say next because you actually know who the character I'm talking about is actually part of Valhalla. So, without further ado, I don't know exactly what happened, but they understand that the Order is the culprit for all these killings, and they are able to pinpoint the place where the Assassin's Creed is hiding, and they basically do a massacre of the place. Basim goes there to try and prevent this, but at the same time he knows that there's a place where he can get the answers that he's looking for. And of course he also has a final boss fight against Rosham, and Rosham is trying to prevent him from knowing the truth. I don't know, it's kind of weird because I don't look at Rosham as being a villain of any sorts, but you know, she's trying to prevent this because you know the reasons why she's doing this. She's almost left at death's doorstep, but then in the next cutscene, you see that she's doing fine. I was confused about the whole timeline and how the things progressed there. And he's able to enter, and basically he discovers that Nihal never existed. Whoa, the plot twist. So basically, she was this representation of him. He was the one doing everything all the time. But Basim was like his innocent and good personality, while Nihal was a representation of his lucky side. And I didn't know any of this until I had to go read forums and explanations of the ending, because you see that Basim is imprisoned somewhere. And apparently he was imprisoned by Odin. But you only know this by reading or by playing Valhalla, I guess, because that's the only way you get that explanation, because they are shy, they don't give you the names in any given moment in the game, and you're just very confused seeing all this unfold. The only thing I was able to grasp was that Nihal was a projection of another side of Basim, but I wouldn't never associate that it was to his Loki personality. And of course he gets out free, finally complete and understanding. And after that, you know, he comes out of the cave. You see no mess outside, so the Creed was being attacked and destroyed. Everything looks fine, like nothing ever happened, like you are in the beginning of the game. And Rosham leaves because she failed as a master, or she feels like she doesn't deserve to be there. And you know, everything's just so very normal, besides Rosham abandoning the order. And, you know, as Basim's is pledging vengeance while looking at the city, his eagle, I forgot the name, basically makes him a scar on his face because the eagle rejects the person that Basim is, because he's no longer the same person. So there were consequences, but at the same time it felt like you were in the beginning of the game, like nothing ever happened. I don't know, it was such a weird feeling. I was so confused with the ending, and honestly, reading the forums, for anyone that went into Mirage thinking that it was a standalone game that had no connections to the previous ones, well, you were sorely mistaken, because apparently, for me, playing Mirage up until that point was fine, but then they introduced that plot and it goes on for, a very good chunk of the game at the end of the game. And I was so confused because I didn't play, like I said at the beginning of this review, I didn't play any games before, because supposedly it's a standalone and I didn't understand anything of the end. So that's a very big pet peeve of mine. But other than that, talking about gameplay and the characters, I feel that I like the characters are very bland. Sure, Rosham has a nice voice and but she isn't developed. She's like the one person that Basim is always taking assignments from, and you don't see a lot. Like, even as a master, you don't see a lot from Rosham. You just know that she was the one that taught everything to Basim. Basim is also not a very developed character. You can see that he has good intentions up until the end of the game, I guess. And he's trying to do his best in the order. He's trying to be just... But you see, sometimes you can also get glimpses of the deviations that could hint you at his lucky personality. And Nihal, well, I guess Nihal is just like this stray cat that pops up here and there. And I mean, the plot twist of her not being his childhood friend, but rather a projection of his personality, like the two personalities are at odds, interesting, but at the same time it was like, really, I feel like the cast of characters that, you know, stand out to you are so few, and making one of them just like a projection of the personality of the protagonist is, I don't even have words. About the gameplay, I was very disappointed in a game that focused so much about parkour and, you know, platforming. I was disappointed at the way they did it. Because basically, the only thing that you do is you run towards the things that you want to climb or, you know, go down from or jump, and you just keep X pressed, and the character will automatically do all the stunts. Which is very boring when I played games like Tomb Raider, and it's a little bit more interactive than that, you know? I felt like it was a shame on that aspect, and it doesn't work well as well, because sometimes I will point in a direction and suddenly Basim just goes the other way entirely, and I'm like, why? Why? This isn't even optimized in the way that you want to do. I don't know, I didn't enjoy, for a game that is very heavily focused on the abilities and jumping from roof to roof, I didn't like the way that they did that mechanic. The fighting as well, you can see that the game really punishes you for not using the stealth. Because if you are in a dungeon and you are suddenly discovered, fighting head-on enemies is, you will be overwhelmed in a matter of seconds, and the combat is very, very unforgiving. I don't know how I can kill an enemy on its back like with one stab, but then if I'm fighting them, I have to hit them like 6 times for them to go down. That's a very huge difference. So I can kill a big burly enemy in one shot if I do it stealthily, but if they fight me, I need to go through these great lengths to be able to defeat them. And of course, in dungeons, you will not be fighting one enemy one-on-one. As soon as you are discovered, they sound the alarm, and when you get your surroundings, you are basically surrounded by 6 of them at least. My strategy was, I was discovered, then I'm gonna go out of the dungeon, wait it out, see if their alarms go down, and then go back in and do it all again. Which was a very much big chore, but I guess it's the way that the game is built. Either that or I suck at combat, which is also an option, but I think that the game is very unforgiving in that sense. The game does have like side quests, if you want to call that, to the contracts, but honestly, they are so very boring. It's like always the same things, because the contracts are people either telling you to go kill someone or to get this object for them. So they aren't very interesting, and they are very repetitive. You have a plotline related to the guy, the shop owner that I can't recall the name, where you basically steal these rich, important items, precious items, from certain people, and you can give them to them, and you kind of advance. I didn't understand, you know, I did it because it was not too difficult to do that, just sometimes stealing people on the street, but I didn't finish it. I don't know what was the finishing point, what rewards would I get from that. I didn't do a lot for him. You also have a Nihal related side quest where it's basically, but you have to be very completionist of the game. You have this under the sea place where you can get these very powerful artifacts, but you have to do a lot of stuff, and I was like, I don't feel like investing my time on it. At the end of the day, I feel like the story is not very compelling. I don't have very strong thoughts on the soundtrack. It's adequate, it fits the country that it's representing, I think. Sometimes there are, you know, very modern tracks which doesn't really fit the historic ambiance, but it is what it is, I mean, choices. And I don't know, the gameplay is not that compelling. Fortunately, it's a short adventure, especially if you know very well how to do the dungeons. But it's a short, being discovered, going back into the dungeon because you really need to do the dungeon, and the amount of times I was lost within the dungeon, because you can't afford to be lost, because suddenly you're going around the corner and there's more guards that way. I don't know. It was a fine experience, but honestly, it was not the kind of experience that I really enjoy. And once again, I don't think that the characters are very compelling. They are bland, the story is bland. The gameplay itself also didn't appeal to me. The contracts, I love to do side quests, but there was no point to them. But there is a side quest that is not a contract that deserves your attention, which I actually caught by mere coincidence, which is a small kid that climbs a tower and cannot go down, and Basim climbs the tower to teach him the leap of faith. You discover that he is the protagonist from Valhalla, if I'm not mistaken. He's the young eagle. So if you want that little small thing, you know, it's short and it's just like a little cute Easter egg that is in the game. So yeah, these are my thoughts. I don't have a lot more to say. There are not characters that really stand out to me in this game. If I would recommend this experience, not really, but I guess if you are an Assassin's Creed fan and you have played all the games before this one, why not give it a shot? Honestly, I felt like it was not the experience for me. I am still very curious about playing the Ezio collection, playing the games that are related, you know, like the beginnings of Assassin's Creed, but yeah, this was not the game for me. By the way, huge shout out to Andre Viana. He's the reason why I played this game. He lent it to me so I could experience it and be able to do this review. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, if you want to see me play all these games live, please do check out my Twitch channel where I play all of them first there, and you can see my reactions and my thoughts on them. I will also say that the game has a few bugs, but what game doesn't have? And I'm known as someone that always gets a lot of bugs, even in well-made games. So I guess that's my problem. And please, if you like this content, leave a like on the video, subscribe, and I hope to see you on the next video. So, may music always be your life force.